Test, test, test. Good evening, Manhattan, New York City, the world, the universe, and beyond. My name's Kirk, and this is my... tonight it's going to be my supernatural TV show. This is my mystical, magical, and spiritual TV show. Get in the frame. Get in the frame, get in the frame. My name's Kirk, and this is my supernatural, spiritual TV show. Metaphysical, mystical, and magical. How you guys doing tonight? Hopefully the mic is not too hot. Is the mic too hot? It looks like it's a little too hot. Test, test, test. Good evening, Manhattan. Good evening, Manhattan. All right, my name's Kirk. The tape is rolling, the sound is recording, and we're just going to go right into the show. We're going live in 5 minutes, but I want to introduce, and as you can see on the screen, oh no, look at that. Wow, that is, what the hell? We didn't set up the Mac. We did not set up the Mac here. Cut to the Mac. Nope, why are we cutting? All right, let's get rid of this. There we go. Okay, maybe that's why. Here's Johnny. My name's Kirk, and this is my spiritual, supernatural, mystical, and magical TV show. And we better get into that history. Oh, okay. So, as you can see here, no, you can't. Damn it! Let's try it again. Camera 1 is a go. And we're going to try camera 3. Let's see if I can fix it without Malik running in here. Mac. Nope. There you go. There's the Mac. And where's camera 1? Number 1. Go to me. And camera 1. Okay, camera 1. Nope. Mac. Nope. We want camera 1 here. Camera 3, select camera 1. Bingo! And we lost the CGI. Camera 1, camera 2. Oh man. Malik, we lost the hey Malik. We had such a groovy visual, and we lost it. Oh, shucks. And we're going live, like right now. Okay, wait a minute. CGI, yes. Mac 1, yes. Nope. Two-headed Kerber. Mac 3. I guess we're just going to have to stick with that, and it was so awesome before. All right, or should we just get Malik in here? Or we can do that. Okay, but then we don't get the Mac. All right, my name's Kirk, and we're going live for good or for bad. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Right? Isn't that what that psycho that needed a rehab kept saying? We'll do it live. We'll fucking do it live. All right, tonight, why are you so afraid? We're going to talk about, what are we talking about, Uncle Kirk? We are talking about, that is just such an awesome, jacked visual. I can't stand it. It's on all my social media right now. That is the carpet in The Shining. And we are going live. Let me just see if I can get us on here live. MNN. Nope. Try it again. Good evening, Manhattan, New York City, the world, the universe, and beyond. I am not going to cut the tape. I am not going to edit it. There's no editing here. So, no, we're not editing shit out. Why are you? My name's Kirk, and this is my spiritual, supernatural, mystical, and magical TV show. We're going to talk about why you're afraid. And fear, somehow fear permeated every aspect of our life. Do we really... Actually, let me put a question to you. Do we incarnate here depending on what your reincarnation sympathies are, or if you believe you have a soul plan, you came in to experience something. Do we come into this body in this lifetime, in this dimension, just to experience fear? And it's a valid question. And you know what? Sometimes it's Kirk's spiritual show. Sometimes it's Kirk's metaphysical show. Sometimes it's Kirk's Strange Universe. Sometimes it's Kirk TV. They're all different shows. And tonight it's going to be Kirk's Supernatural show. Kirk's Supernatural Television. And we're going to explore and talk about The Shining and what makes... The Shining is generally considered one of the most frightening movies of all time. Metaphysical show. Sometimes it's Kirk's Strange Universe. Sometimes it's Kirk TV. There we go. We're good to go. And over 9 million people are now watching us in New York City and on computer laptops and the internet all over the world, from what my producers say is a random guess. Okay, somehow fear permeated every aspect of our life. I want to talk to you about The Shining. I'm kind of like, I've seen The Shining only twice, but I've actually seen all the documentaries and all the YouTube conspiracy theories many times. So let's take down our, what's his kid's name? I can't remember his name. We have Jack Torrance and Shelley Duvall. Okay, you can see I didn't do my full homework. What are the characters' names? So let's just put that in a little pocket right now. And there's Jack. Here's Johnny. And let's go over here and look at, can we get a full visual? Let's do a cut. No, we can't do it. Let's do a Mac cut. Okay, now it's fucked up. It's FooBar over here. Let's try Mac on camera 1. Now we can't do that either. Yes, we did it. Okay. So this is my history. Pay no attention to Barbra Streisand. I don't know why. That is not something I look at every day. I promise. I don't listen to Barbra Streisand. Talking about being afraid. Okay, let's go back into my history. Here's what you got here. Okay. Aside from this, you've got all this stuff I've been watching in the last day, month. Okay. And it goes, here you go. Okay. All these things. Why The Shining is so terrifying. Twin Peaks. Making The Shining, a film by Vivian Kubrick. That's Stanley Kubrick's daughter. The Shining, the mystery of the twins. Something in the River of Blood. It just, the conspiracy theories go on and on and on. So maybe, why is it so terrifying? Because here's a weird thing. When you think about it and you consider it, there's actually no real violence. Jack Nicholson, I'm going to give spoilers. The Shining was put out in 1980. It took 5 years to film and produce, so it started out in 1975. It's based on a book by Stephen King. Stephen King absolutely hated The Shining by Kubrick. So if you haven't seen it, you know, trust me, you're probably not walking the face of the planet at this point. I would recommend that you go see it again, and there's going to be spoilers. That's kind of pretty much all I'm going to talk about. But so if you want to see it, stop the video and go and watch it and then come back to this. But I would be a little hard-pressed to imagine a person that hasn't seen The Shining that likes horror films or just knows Kubrick or likes film in general. It's generally considered a masterpiece of film, and it's considered always on the top 10 or top 100 lists of the scariest, most frightening movies of all time. But why? And if you know The Shining and you remember it, there's only like 1 or 2 really violent scenes, and you know, then there's no violence. It's psychological violence. It's psychological terror. And so what is it about fear? I chose what is it about fear, and why are you afraid? Do we like to be afraid? And the thing about the movie is the basic plot. Let's go to a trailer, actually, of The Shining, if I could find that. And then we're going to go to some other things. But let's first just see the trailer for The Shining tonight. And the subject is fear, and this is Kirk. My name's Kirk, and it's a supernatural, spiritual TV show. So let's go over here and type in The Shining trailer. There you go. Okay. Here we go. So let's watch this.
Name, Hannah Grace. Age, 22.
All right. We'll we'll pass on this ad. This is, I don't know. Okay, I don't know what that is. All right, it's an ad. Okay.
Told you anything in Denver about
Here we go.
the tragedy we had up here during the winter of 1970? Well, a man named Charles Grady is the winter caretaker. And he came up here with his wife and two little girls, I think about 8 and 10. From what I've been told, I mean, he seemed like a completely normal individual. But at some point during the winter, he must have suffered some kind of a complete mental breakdown. He ran amok and killed his family with an axe.
You can rest assured, Mr. Ullman, that's not going to happen with me.
Mom? Yeah? Do you really want to go and live in that hotel for the winter?
Sure I do. It'll be lots of fun.
Yeah, I guess so.
For some people, solitude and isolation can of itself become a problem.
What do you get? He kills you and Danny.
You did this to me. Didn't you? How could you? How could you?
Here's Johnny.
All right, so you only see... You want to know why this is a masterpiece? Because, you know, you only see... You saw the Shelley Duvall character hit the Jack Nicholson character, Jack Torrance, in the head with the bat, and that's it. That is the only time there's actual violence, except when he chops the door down, but he's chopping a door down. That's violence to a door. So what is it? There's no ghosts. There's no real special effects even to speak of. So what is it about this movie that makes people so terrifying and makes it known and legion of one of the most terrifying films ever made, and also what makes it a masterpiece? So before we show a couple clips on YouTube, you know, we're going to have to talk about this maybe a couple of weeks. And we got the holidays coming up. I'll be here next week, and then the next week after that, I think I'll be gone. But so we can talk about it tonight and next week. Here's a couple theories, okay? First of all, people say that The Shining is actually not just about ghosts and a haunted hotel, but it's actually about the slaughter of the Native Americans in the United States. Other people say it's about, descent into madness and, of course, a haunted hotel, ghosts and spirits. Other people say it's about the Holocaust in general that happened in Germany and, around Western Europe. Other people say that it's about incest and pedophilia. Some people say it's about alcoholism, and other people say it's a conspiracy movie about the moon landing and that Kubrick faked the moon landing. Now, where are all these things coming from? So if you go over to YouTube and you just start to look at or type in, let's see, conspiracy theory, The Shining. So we're going to go up here and we're going to type in The Shining conspiracy. Okay, Shining conspiracy. So let's see what we get. Oh, we wanted, we wanted YouTube. Okay, there's the carpet, actually, if you didn't see that. YouTube, let's go over to YouTube. The carpet, incidentally, is called, and you know, there is an entire archive in London, England, about Kubrick's filmmaking, and people have actually gone there and tried to find out where did the carpet come from. There's no receipts about the carpet. There's nothing about the carpet in this archive. And so the only thing they can find, there's no purchase order for this carpet. And you have to understand that this carpet is, it's really distinctive. It's like unbelievably distinctive. And then it's all over the hotel. And then in one room, room 237, and there's actually a documentary called Room 237. In room 237, the carpet is totally different. It's totally, totally different. So let's go back over to YouTube, and we're going to type in, we're going to show you right here. Let's see, The Shining conspiracy movies. Okay, movie. All right, so let's see why didn't it give me YouTube? Damn it. All right, let's try one more time. Here we go. Get rid of Barbra Streisand. Okay, I was doing a specific project. Okay, The Shining, one more time. The Shining film conspiracy. I know it's a little manic in here tonight, right? Okay, The Hidden Meaning, The Shining, Danny's Ordeal, and the bear costume. Here you can watch the actual movie. And The Shining Code. There's a guy, there's the carpet. Kubrick's reference to Apollo 11. The ending explained. And then you have this guy, Roger Ager, who has 6 hours. This guy, Roger Ager, and his collective learning, he has produced a 6-hour documentary only and all about The Shining. It's not just including The Shining, but it is all about The Shining. Let's see. The Collective Learning Channel. So you can like look this up, and I don't know. You know, since The Shining is so old, he probably has all these other videos, but you can look this guy up. He has over a 6-hour documentary that he produced on his own, and it's actually really excellent. So I think, you know, for me, it's about probably pedophilia and sexual abuse and incest and alcoholism, and it's also about what happens in our fear, collective fear about what happens when we're alone. And I've never heard a documentary or any of these videos on here really talk about that. Like, okay, so we go over here to this one. Why is...
It's been said and ingrained in us that either you are...
Why is The Shining so terrifying? Okay, so this, we'll talk about it. And basically, we're just going to kind of watch this one video for the next 10 minutes, and I'm not going to interrupt, and I'm going to let you see for yourself. Okay? The following is...
I thought about the film
here you go.
Afterwards, and even when I wasn't thinking about it, there were things that bothered me about it. I became more and more convinced that there is, in this film, a deeply laid subtext that takes on the Holocaust.
The Shining? That movie was about the genocide of the American Indian.
So if you watch those three things, you begin to understand this deeper story. The idea that Stanley Kubrick was involved with faking the Apollo moon landings.
Room 237 is a fascinating documentary centered around Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The film documents the wealth of conspiracy theories that have emerged from different interpretations of the 1980s horror masterpiece, with different interviewees suggesting that the movie is everything from a story of sexual hedonism to an allegory of the genocide of the Native American people, to even a theory that the entire movie is actually a coded confession from Kubrick about how he helped NASA fake the moon landing. It's an enthralling watch, but while hearing so many theories makes it difficult to buy into any particular one, it does make one thing very clear. The Shining is a special movie. It has an abyss-like quality that draws people to its edges and compels them to stare down endlessly into its shadowy depths. And I'm very much one of them. The Shining terrifies me, and I've briefly documented the mild childhood trauma the film caused me in a previous video, but what I'd like to do today is try and dive a little deeper, and shed some light on what exactly about this movie is so frightening, and why so many people feel so compelled to try and uncover its deeper layers. Based on the 1974 novel written by Stephen King, if you've never experienced The Shining, the story of it goes like this. Recovering alcoholic and struggling writer Jack Torrance is employed to be the winter caretaker of the snowbound Overlook Hotel, a job that will require him, his wife Wendy, and his son Danny to stay in the massive building completely alone for all of winter. I think when you really look at it, there's three fundamental parts to The Shining story that make it so disturbing. The first is the sense of isolation it elicits and the anxiety that grows from that. The Torrances are completely alone in the Overlook, and while isolation in and of itself is unsettling, where it becomes frightening is that we're never more vulnerable than when we're alone. And The Shining plays directly into that fear. In the first 20 minutes of the movie, there's so many little subtle suggestions that something bad is going to happen. We're told that the previous winter caretaker went insane and murdered his wife and daughters with an axe. Even casual conversations seem to lead back to macabre ideas such as cannibalism and disturbed Native American burial grounds. There's the constant idea of violence and murder, and within that anticipation there's anxiety. We know the Torrances will be alone, completely vulnerable to the malicious force that's coming. But perhaps even more disturbing is how that malicious force manifests. As the weeks go by, Jack grows more and more unhinged, seeing people that aren't there and acting in bizarre, unsettling ways, until finally his madness escalates to the point that he makes the decision that he's going to murder his wife and child. There's no pleasant way of putting this, but at its core, The Shining is a story about a man harming his family, which is something so unnatural and awful, but also something that occurs every day. I think a lot of people tend to write Stephen King off as a pulpy horror writer, and I think that's not unwarranted in some cases, but he's at his best when he's exploring the everyday horror rooted in the human psyche. And Jack Torrance's desire to harm his family is maybe the best example of this. In his book, The Stephen King Companion, King wrote about how his own experience as a parent informed the writing of Jack Torrance. The protagonist is a man who has broken his son's arm, who has a history of child beating, who has beaten himself. And as a young father with 2 children, I was horrified by my occasional feelings of real antagonism towards my children. Won't you ever stop? Won't you ever go to bed? There are times when I felt very angry toward my children and have even felt as though I could hurt them. And so what the character of Jack Torrance is this very dark fear taken to a horrifying extreme. And I think this is what makes him such a genuinely unsettling character. As when you think about it, all he really is a deranged man with a sharp weapon, and horror cinema has no shortage of those. But it's his connection to his victims, his family, the people he's meant to care for and protect, that makes his gradual descent into madness and the resulting acts of violence so frightening. And it's the mere suggestion of this that makes some of the film's more low-key moments so profoundly disturbing.
You would never hurt Mom and me, would ya?
So if we stop there, these two factors alone are well enough to create a terrifying story, even separate from anything supernatural. But of course, there is a supernatural element to The Shining. The Overlook itself. It's the hotel that seems to be slowly twisting Jack's mind and tormenting the family with visions of blood-filled elevators and dismembered little girls. But I think an important aspect to the Overlook is the unusual way it interacts with the Torrances. Unlike a lot of the more typical haunted houses of horror cinema, the Overlook never directly engages with the family. It never performs any physical actions or harms a member of the Torrances, the only exception being the bruises Danny suffers from visiting room 237, and the door that opens by itself in the food cellar. But even those happen off-screen and could be explained in other ways. Rather, what the hotel does seem to be trying to do is directly attack the sanity of its occupants, showing them things they don't want to see and quietly whispering to them in a variety of lurid ways. And it seems to be doing this with a distant, distinctly mocking glee. As it's not trying to murder the family, it's trying to get them to murder each other. And that is an infinitely more disturbing goal. Like the hotel is some massive, unknowable alien creature taking delight in slowly crushing the life out of its inhabitants. And I think this is a more effective way to think about the Overlook. It's not really haunted as much as it is alive. There's a malevolent consciousness to the hotel, nearly a Lovecraftian quality to it, as if the various entities that inhabit it aren't individual ghosts as much as they are tendrils of a much larger, more unknowable being. And that to me is infinitely more frightening. You would think with such a strong premise that when combined with Stanley Kubrick's expertise in filmmaking, you'd have an instant horror smash hit. But unusually, this wasn't actually the case, as The Shining was not especially well received when it released in 1980. The film suffered a lukewarm opening weekend, grossing significantly less than both The Omen and Alien, and was even panned by several prominent film critics. With Variety magazine writing in their review of the film, Kubrick has teamed with jumpy Jack Nicholson to destroy all that is so terrifying about Stephen King's bestseller. The film was even nominated for 2 Golden Razzies, with Kubrick up for Worst Director and Shelley Duvall for Worst Actress. But that was nothing compared to the film's biggest detractor, Stephen King himself, who loathed the film, saying it carried none of the heart of the novel and that it destroyed the character of Jack and Wendy Torrance, calling the film cold, without heart, and misogynistic. But the quote that's always stood out to me the most is one King reportedly made of Kubrick after first seeing the movie, in which he stated, "I think he set out to make a film that hurts people." And I don't think at the time King had any idea just how right he was. The Shining is not an easy movie to watch. It has a slow, creeping dread to it that's quite difficult to get a hold of. Something about it just feels wrong. And to find an answer to why this is the case, I think we have to look at the very particular way The Shining was created. Generally, there's 2 rules of thumb when shooting horror cinema. Use of tight, angled close-ups to limit the audience's view of scenes, making them wonder what might be lying beyond the edge of frame, as well as lots of quick cuts to keep things feeling frantic when the scares actually do happen. And one thing that's so unusual about The Shining is how it leans away from both these conventions. Nearly the entire film was shot with an extremely wide-angle 18mm lens, which makes the spaces of the Overlook Hotel feel gigantic and overpowering. In a lot of the shots, the background completely engulfs the characters, drowning them in large amounts of empty space and constantly visually reinforcing the idea that these characters are alone, which ties back to the sense of isolation we talked about earlier, but it also means that when something does appear, it's far more shocking and frightening. One of the reasons the hallway scene with the 2 little girls is so shocking is that we're confronted with something that shouldn't be there. At this point in the movie, the film spent nearly 40 minutes visually assuring us that this hotel is empty except for the Torrances, only to then shatter that assurance. And this is a fundamental fear The Shining plays upon, the unease that comes with people appearing in places they shouldn't be.
Okay.
What is also key in understanding the unease of how The Shining scares us. through subtle visual horror. While the film does have its more traditional scare,
all right, if you want to continue watching that and you can't find part 2 of this, this is, and you know, hopefully you can find it. It's entitled Why, right down here, Why the Shining is Terrifying. And that loaded it in is the actual person that made it, but it doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of views considering how long it's been on. But so if you want to continue watching it, that's the title of what we've been watching. We're going to have to wrap it up. And
The Shining doesn't try to surprise us. Rather, it clearly...
There's another thing that I want to show you next week in my history, The Shining and Danny's Ordeal and the Bear. And we'll just end with that, and I will see you guys to next week in the Cyber Temple of Supernatural Spiritual Love. And thanks for watching. Okay, this is the guy, Rob Ager, who has made the 6-hour documentary. And you can, I'll let you pause that and read it and kind of just get on with it. There we go.
Has a homosexual relationship with one of the hotel's form.
Danny's Ordeal and the Bear Costume Man. Okay, so this is part of his documentary.
One of the most frequent
there we go.
questions I've received about The Shining over the years is, what does the guy in the bear costume mean? The throwback to a subplot of Stephen King's novel in which a party guest in a dog costume has a homosexual relationship with one of the hotel's former owners. Now, the first thing to note is that in the film the guy is dressed in a bear costume instead of a dog costume. A shift from dog to bear doesn't have any significant effect on the aesthetic scariness of the scene, so there must have been some sort of logic at work in Kubrick's decision. And I think it's more than just a case of, oh, we couldn't find a dog costume, so we just used a bear costume. I'm sure you'll agree with that as we go on. The second obvious factor is that Kubrick has omitted the entire backstory associated to the dog-costumed man in the novel, leaving his audience at a complete loss as to this scene's meaning. Seems like a pretty damn clumsy thing to do. If you're going to remove that whole backstory, then why have the bear-costumed or dog-costumed man in the film at all? It seems like an amateur mistake to make, and Kubrick was a hell of a lot more in depth than that. He would spend years revising scripts, having other writers work with him on scripts, making sure things that were all ironed out nicely. He wouldn't just make a stupid mistake like that. The switch from dog to bear is an essential key because there are lots of other suspicious appearances of bears in the movie. We'll start with the easiest one to notice, which is in the scene of Danny talking to the psychiatrist. Danny has just had a nightmare vision in the bathroom, so his mother has called a doctor. In the close-up of Danny, we see that his pillow has a teddy bear face on it, which is placed prominently in shot next to his head. If Kubrick didn't intend that to be there, then it's quite a mistake because it's rather distracting visually. We'll come to the dialogue of this scene in a minute because it's important, but first of all, look carefully at this teddy pillow. Here's the original Pillow Pals prop from a catalogue way back in the 1970s when the movie was made. And look at the eyes between the two. In the catalogue, the eyes are round, but in The Shining, the eyes have been trimmed to look more sinister, like the floor dials of the gaping mouth River of Blood elevator. The scene even begins with the doctor looking right into Danny's eyes as if emphasising the importance of eyes in the scene. In fact, her voice brings up the subject of eyes before we even see what's happening in the scene.
Now hold your eyes still so I can see.
Several times in the movie, this elevator, with its gaping mouth and eyes appearance, is intercut with Danny's screaming face, cross-symbolising the two. And the teddy even has a red gaping mouth, like the River of Blood screaming elevator face. And if you're wondering where the hell Kubrick may have gotten the gaping mouth idea from, there's a little moment in the Shining novel on page 280 where a terrified Jack Torrance avoids going into an elevator because, quote, it was too much like an open mouth, too much by half, end quote. What are the odds of that popping up in the novel and then the face comparison with an elevator popping up in the movie? I think Kubrick read that line in the novel and said, hey, I can do something with that thematically.
Okay, guys. It says basically that the poster kind of looks like a teddy bear and a child screaming at the same time.
Another conceptual link is that both of these bear appearances are featured in relation to beds or bedrooms. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore by slowly building up to my interpretation of this theme. I'll just say it outright. Danny has most likely been sexually abused by his father, Jack, and this bear fellatio scene symbolises the abuse. Here's a piece of evidence which on its own very strongly supports the abuse theme. When Jack's employers approach him in the lobby on closing day, Jack is reading a January 1978 issue of Playgirl magazine, not Playboy. So first of all, there's the obvious homosexual innuendo, but the story titles featured on this particular issue include Incest, Why Parents Sleep with Their Children. Oh, just a reminder at this point, for those of you thinking that the Shining movie can be explained by the Stephen King novel, no it can't. Kubrick stripped away most of the...
Alright, we got in there. I wish we didn't have to go, but we do. I will see you guys next week in the Cyber Hotel of Love and Light. And that's it, guys. From me, thanks for watching. And I'm here every Monday, 11:30 p.m. channel 1997 in high def, and you can find me on all social media all over the web. Thanks for watching, guys. Shakti, namaste. Keep it strong, stay strong, and I'll see you guys next week in the Cyber Temple of Love. Shakti.